Marcus Webb stood at the observation deck of the diplomatic shuttle, watching the purple-tinged atmosphere of Asteria Prime grow larger in the viewport. 6 months ago, he would have been excited about this assignment. 6 months ago, everything had been different. Final approach in 20 minutes. Ambassador Webb, the pilot announced. Marcus barely nodded. His reflection in the transparent aluminum, showing a man who looked older than his 34 years. The gray streaks at his temples hadn't been there before the accident. Neither had the permanent shadows under his green eyes. His hand unconsciously moved to the platinum band he still wore on his left ring finger. Catherine had been dead for half a year, taken by a transport malfunction that should never have happened. She'd been on her way to meet him at the Mars colony, excited about their new assignment together. Instead, Marcus had identified her body and buried his dreams alongside her. The Earth Diplomatic Corps had given him 3 months of leave. Then they'd given him this assignment, cultural liaison to the Asterian Empire, a role that required living at the royal palace and facilitating human-alien relations. It was meant to be therapeutic, they said. A fresh start. Marcus thought it was more likely a way to keep him busy enough that he couldn't drown in grief. The shuttle touched down with barely a whisper on the palace landing pad. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the welcoming committee, a dozen Asterian guards in ceremonial armor that shimmered like oil on water, their tall forms radiating military precision. And at the center, unmistakable even from a distance, stood Empress Silvara herself. Marcus had seen Hollis, of course. Everyone had. Silvara the Radiant, they called her ruler of an empire spanning 12 systems, whose people had been humanity's rivals until the Treaty of Proxima had ended hostilities just 8 months ago. But the Hollis hadn't captured the way she held herself. The quiet authority that needed no throne to be evident. As Marcus descended the shuttle ramp, carrying only a single travel case, everything else had been sent ahead. He got his first clear look at the Empress. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deep lavender that seemed to catch and refract the light of Asteria's twin suns. Her hair, if it could be called that, cascaded down her back in crystalline strands that chimed softly with her movements. Her eyes were the color of amber, with vertical pupils that contracted slightly as she studied him. She wore robes of midnight blue that somehow managed to look both regal and practical. And Marcus noticed she wore no crown. Later, he would learn she only wore the ceremonial headdress for state functions, preferring to move freely otherwise. "Ambassador Webb," she said, her voice melodious, but carrying an undertone of something heavier weariness, perhaps, or old pain. "Welcome to Asteria Prime. I am Empress Silvara." Marcus bowed in the formal style he'd been taught. "Your Majesty?" "I'm honored by the welcome." Her lips curved slightly. "I make it a practice to greet important guests personally. You are the first human to serve in my court. That makes you very important indeed." As the formal pleasantries concluded and the procession began moving toward the palace proper, Marcus noticed something odd. The Empress kept glancing behind her, her expression flickering between irritation and concern. "Is something wrong, Your Majesty?" Marcus asked. Silvara sighed, a remarkably human gesture. "My daughters were supposed to be at their music lessons. Their tutor just informed me they've disappeared again. Disappeared. They have a habit of evading their guardians when they find palace life too boring," Silvara explained, though her tone suggested this was more serious than a simple game. "Usually they hide in the garden pavilions or the library. But with the recent security concerns..." She didn't need to finish. Marcus knew that not everyone on Asteria Prime or Earth, for that matter, was happy about the peace treaty. There had been 3 assassination attempts on human diplomats in the past month alone. "How old are they?" Marcus asked. "Neva is 8, Kess is 6, and Till just turned 4. Something softened in Silvara's expression when she spoke of them. Their father passed 2 years ago. Since then, they've been testing boundaries. Marcus felt an unexpected pang of recognition. Grief made people do strange things. Even children. The palace interior was breathtaking. All soaring ceilings and walls that seemed to be carved from a single piece of luminescent stone. But Marcus barely noticed. He was too busy watching the Empress's growing concern as guards reported back negative findings from each search area. They were crossing through what appeared to be a meditation garden when Marcus heard a soft sound, almost like a sigh, coming from beneath an ornamental bridge that spanned a shallow pool. He held up a hand, stopping the procession. "Your Majesty, may I?" Salvara nodded, her amber eyes sharp with sudden hope. Marcus approached the bridge slowly, careful not to make threatening moves. As he got closer, he could make out 3 small figures huddled in the shadows beneath the arch. 3 pairs of amber eyes, identical to their mother's, watched him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Hello," Marcus said softly, crouching down to their level. "I'm Marcus. I'm new here, and I seem to be lost. I don't suppose you could help me?" The middle child, Kess, he guessed, tilted her head, considering. "You're the human," she said, her voice carrying the same melodious quality as her mother's, though higher pitched. "The one who's going to live here." "That's right. Though I have to admit, I'm a bit nervous about it. Everything here is so different from home. Are you scared?" This from the youngest, Till, whose crystalline hair was shorter than her sister's, barely reaching her shoulders. Marcus considered the question seriously. "A little," he admitted. "Being in a new place without anyone familiar can be frightening." "Is that why you're hiding here?" The 3 princesses exchanged glances. Finally, Neva, the eldest, spoke. "We're not hiding. We're just taking a break." "From what?" "From everyone watching us all the time," Neva said, and Marcus heard the weight in her voice. "From everyone expecting us to be perfect. From everyone comparing us to Papa." Marcus understood that weight. He'd felt it every day since Catherine died, everyone watching to see if he would break, measuring his every action against the man he used to be. "I know something about that," he said quietly. "People watching, waiting to see if you'll fail. It's exhausting. You understand?" Kess asked, surprised. "More than you might think." Marcus sat down fully, his back against the cool stone of the bridge. "Sometimes you need to find a quiet place where you can just breathe." Without warning, Till scrambled out from under the bridge and plopped down next to him. Her small hand found his larger one, and Marcus felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. "You're warm," Till said, sounding delighted. "Mama said humans run hot, but I didn't believe it." Kess emerged next, followed more cautiously by Neva. Within moments, all 3 princesses had settled around him, drawn by the novelty of his presence, and perhaps by the fact that he'd spoken to them like people rather than precious objects to be protected. "The guards are going to find us soon," Neva said pragmatically. "Mama will be angry." "Your mother isn't angry," Marcus said. "She's worried." "There's a difference." "How do you know?" "Because worry comes from love. Anger is different. It's hotter, sharper. What I saw in your mother's eyes was worry." As if summoned by the conversation, Empress Silvara appeared at the entrance to the garden. The guards behind her started forward, but she raised a hand, stopping them. For a long moment, she simply stood there, taking in the scene. Her 3 daughters, who'd been missing for over an hour, sitting peacefully with the human ambassador they'd just met. Marcus started to stand, but Silvara shook her head slightly. Instead, she approached slowly, and to his utter surprise, sat down on his other side. "So this is where you disappeared to," she said to her daughters, though her tone was gentle. "We've had half the palace guard searching." "We're sorry, Mama," Neva said, though she didn't move from her spot against Marcus's side. We just needed... I know, Silvara said softly. I know, little stars. They sat there in silence for several minutes, an oddly comfortable quiet broken only by the soft tinkling of the water fountain nearby. Marcus felt the tension slowly draining from the Empress's shoulders, noticed how the harsh lines around her eyes softened as she watched her daughters. You're good with them, Silvara said finally, speaking to Marcus. Most adults try too hard. Treat them like they're made of glass. They're children, not glass sculptures, Marcus replied. They need space to be themselves, not perfect miniatures of what everyone expects. Silvara's amber eyes met his, and Marcus saw recognition there, the understanding of one wounded soul recognizing another. The dossier I received about you mentioned your wife, she said quietly, pitched so only he could hear. I'm sorry for your loss. The one I received mentioned your husband, Marcus replied. I'm sorry for yours as well. Grief is a strange companion, isn't it? Silvara's gaze drifted to her daughters. Some days I think I've learned to carry it. Other days, it crushes me. Yes, Marcus said simply, because what else was there to say? Till had fallen asleep against his side, her small body radiating a coolness that was pleasant in the warm garden air. Cass and Neva were whispering to each other, occasionally giggling at some private joke. I think, Silvara said, that bringing you here may have been wiser than I realized. My daughters need someone who understands what it means to hurt, to heal. She paused. Perhaps I do as well. Their eyes met again, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest, not the sharp pain of grief he'd grown accustomed to, but something else. Something like the first hint of spring after a long winter. Perhaps we all do, he said. And there, in an alien garden on a world far from Earth, surrounded by 3 sleeping princesses and watched over by the glow of twin suns, 2 broken people began the slow process of becoming whole. The morning suns. Marcus corrected himself, mentally cast long purple shadows across the palace training grounds. He'd been on Asteria Prime for 3 weeks now, and his body was still adjusting to the longer day cycle. 27 hours instead of Earth's 24 made every day feel slightly stretched. Like time itself moved differently here. You're holding your shoulders too high, came a voice from behind him. Marcus turned to find Empress Silvara watching him from the edge of the grounds. She'd abandoned her formal robes for something more practical, fitted pants and a tunic that allowed free movement. Her crystalline hair was bound back in an intricate braid. I didn't realize I had an audience. Your Majesty, Marcus said, lowering the practice staff he'd been using. Silvara, she corrected, moving closer. When we're alone, please. I have enough people bowing and scraping during official functions. Over the past weeks, their relationship had shifted into something Marcus couldn't quite define. Not friendship. Exactly, the gap between their positions was too vast for that. But there was an ease between them that surprised him, a comfortable silence that spoke of shared understanding. Your form is good, Silvara observed, circling him with an evaluator's eye. But you fight like you're expecting to be hurt. You're braced for impact before it comes. Occupational hazard, Marcus replied. I spent 5 years in diplomatic security before moving to the liaison course. You learn to expect trouble. Or perhaps it's not occupation at all. Her amber eyes met his with uncomfortable perception. Perhaps it's something more personal. Marcus looked away, setting the staff aside. She was right, of course. Since Catherine's death, he'd been moving through the world like a man expecting the next blow, waiting for the universe to take something else from him. The girls ask about you constantly, Silvara said, changing the subject with practiced grace. Neva wants to know if all humans are as warm as you. Kes keeps stealing books from the library about Earth. And Till, she smiled softly. Till has started drawing pictures of you and that ridiculous cat of yours. Marcus couldn't help but smile at the mention of Jasper. The orange tabby had been Catherine's cat originally, and Marcus had nearly left him on Earth. But at the last moment, he'd brought the animal along, the last living connection to his old life. Jasper had proven surprisingly adaptable to alien environments, and the princesses were completely enchanted by him. "They're wonderful children," Marcus said. "You've raised them well. I've tried." Silvara's expression clouded. "Without Kelvin, it's been difficult. He was better at the gentle parts of parenting. I'm better at ruling, at making hard decisions. Sometimes I worry I'm turning them into little soldiers instead of children." "You're doing better than you think," Marcus assured her. "They're kind, curious, and brave. Those don't come from harsh parenting." "They disappeared again yesterday," Silvara admitted. "Chancellor Morvith found them in the observatory, teaching Jasper to chase the light projections from the stellar maps." Marcus laughed and was surprised by how genuine it sounded. "That does sound like them." Morvith was not amused. "He believes I'm too lenient, that I should discipline them more strictly." Her jaw tightened. "He's also made his opposition to your presence here very clear." "I've noticed." Marcus had indeed noticed the Chancellor's barely concealed hostility. Morvith was a traditional Asterian who viewed the peace treaty as a sign of weakness. Having a human living in the palace was, to him, an insult. "He's harmless," Silvara said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Just old and set in his ways." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace complex. The crystalline walls seemed to amplify the sound, turning it into a physical force that made his teeth ache. "Security breach," Silvara said immediately, her entire demeanor shifting from thoughtful companion to warrior queen. "The princesses, where are they?" "They were supposed to be at lessons in the garden pavilion," Marcus said, already running. Silvara kept pace beside him, her longer legs covering ground quickly. The garden pavilion was located in the eastern section of the palace grounds, a beautiful structure of living crystal that had been grown rather than built. As they approached, Marcus saw the door hanging open, crystalline shards scattered across the ground where someone had forced entry. Inside, chaos. 2 guards lay unconscious, their armor cracked. The tutor, an elderly Asterian named Master Ven, was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, trying to shield something with his body. "The princesses," Silvara breathed, her voice tight with terror, but the pavilion was empty of children. The lesson tablets lay scattered, and one of Till's favorite ribbons lay torn on the floor. "They took them," Master Ven gasped. 3 assailants, masked. They stunned the guards and grabbed the children. "I tried to stop them, but which direction?" Marcus demanded. "East, toward the service gardens." Marcus and Silvara exchanged a single glance, then both were running. Behind them, palace guards scrambled to follow. But Marcus and Silvara had a head start. Driven by adrenaline and fear, the service gardens were a maze of utility, corridors and maintenance access points, perfect for someone trying to escape the palace undetected. As they ran, Marcus's mind raced through possibilities. Ransom? Political statement? An attempt to restart the war? He heard them before he saw them. Neva's voice, high and defiant. "Let us go. Our mother will find you, and you'll be sorry." Marcus rounded a corner and froze. 3 figures in dark tactical gear held the princesses in a small courtyard surrounded by high walls. All 3 assailants were Asterian, their faces covered, but their distinctive physiology unmistakable. Each held a crystalline blade to a princess's throat. One more step and the human lover's spawn die. The lead assailant snarled and heavily accented. English clearly meant for Marcus too. "Understand." Silvara stopped beside Marcus, her face a mask of controlled terror. "Let my daughters go," she said, her voice deadly calm. "Whatever your grievance, It's with me, not them. Our grievance is with you, false empress, the leader spat. You who would pollute our empire with human contamination. You who betrayed everything our people stand for. The war was killing us, Silvara replied. Peace was the only option. Peace is surrender. The assailant's grip tightened on Neva, making the girl whimper. And these half-breed sympathizers prove how far you've fallen. Perhaps their deaths will wake our people to your weakness. Marcus felt something cold and calculating settle over him. He recognized this state combat clarity. His security training called it. Time seemed to slow, and he assessed the situation with detached precision. 3 assailants. Crystalline blades at 3 throats. Distance, approximately 15 feet. The courtyard walls were too high to climb quickly. Guards would arrive in 30 seconds, maybe less. But 30 seconds was too long. His hand moved to his belt, finding the compact plasma torch he'd been using earlier for equipment maintenance. Not a weapon, but in the right hands, anything could be dangerous. You don't want to do this, Marcus said, taking a careful step forward. You kill those children, and you lose any moral authority you think you have. You become nothing more than child murderers. Stay back, human. The leader warned. Marcus took another step. You wanted to send a message about human contamination? Look at me. He spread his arms. I'm right here. Let them go. Take me instead. I'm the symbol you actually want. Marcus, no, Silvara hissed. But Marcus ignored her, taking another step. 3 little girls, or 1 adult human diplomat. Which makes the better statement. Which actually proves your point. He could see the assailant's hesitation, the slight loosening of his grip on Neva. It was a gamble, but Marcus was betting on ideology. These weren't hardened killers. They were extremists, people who believed they were righteous. Murdering children would crack that righteousness. Think about it, Marcus continued, now within 10 feet. Kill me, and you're heroes to your cause. Kill them, and your monsters even your own people will hunt down. The leader's hand wavered. You would sacrifice yourself? For alien spawn? For 3 innocent children who've done nothing wrong except be born to the wrong parents, Marcus said firmly. Yes. The moment stretched like crystal about to shatter. Then everything happened at once. The leader lowered his blade from Neva's throat, pushing her forward, but the other 2 assailants panicked. The one holding Kess raised his weapon to strike. Marcus threw the plasma torch in a spinning arc, the bright beam distracting the attacker for a crucial second. It was enough. Silvara moved like liquid lightning, crossing the distance in a blur. Her hand caught the attacker's wrist, and there was a sickening crack as she twisted. The blade clattered away. The 3rd assailant released Till and ran. But palace guards were already flooding the courtyard. Marcus caught Neva as she stumbled forward, then dropped to his knees as all 3 princesses crashed into him, their small bodies shaking with fear and relief. He wrapped his arms around them, making soothing sounds as they cried against his chest. You're safe, he murmured. I've got you. You're safe now. Silvara dealt with the assailants with brutal efficiency, her guards subduing them in moments. But Marcus saw her hands shaking as she turned toward her daughters, saw the barely controlled terror in her eyes. Mama! Till sobbed, and Silvara dropped to her knees beside Marcus, gathering her children into her arms. For a moment, Marcus started to pull back, to give them space, but Neva's hand grabbed his shirt. Don't go, she whispered. Please don't go. So Marcus stayed, and somehow his arms ended up around Silvara as well, all of them in one tangled embrace in the middle of the courtyard. He felt her shaking, felt the crystalline tears that fell from her eyes, tears he hadn't known Asterians could cry. You offered yourself, she whispered into his shoulder. You are going to let them take you. Of course, Marcus said simply. What else would I do? You could have died, but they wouldn't have. Silvara pulled back enough to look at him, and Marcus was startled by the intensity in her amber eyes. Why? Why would you risk your life for children that aren't yours, for a people that isn't yours? Marcus looked at the three princesses, still clinging to both of them. Because they needed someone to, he said. Because they're children, and children should be protected. Because... He trailed off, not sure how to explain the tightness in his chest, the way these three little girls had somehow worked their way past his defenses. Because I care about them. Because I care about you. The admission hung in the air between them. Silara's eyes searched his face, and Marcus saw the moment something shifted, when the Empress became simply a woman, when duty gave way to something more human, more real. Marcus, she said softly, and his name had never sounded like that before. Like a prayer, like a promise. But before either of them could say more, Chancellor Morvith arrived with a contingent of high guards. His face twisted with barely suppressed rage. This is what comes of your foolish alliance, he declared, pointing at the subdued assailants. Our own people turning against you. This human brings nothing but chaos. This human just saved my daughter's lives, Silvara said coldly, rising to her full height. Marcus stood as well, keeping the princesses behind him. While you were nowhere to be found, Ambassador Webb put himself between my children and death. He is the reason they were targeted, Morvith insisted. His presence here inflames the purists, gives them a symbol to rally against. No, Silvara said, her voice carrying absolute authority. You give them a symbol by suggesting their hatred is justified. You give them power by treating their extremism as legitimate opposition. She stepped forward, towering over the Chancellor despite his significant height. Ambassador Webb stays, and if I hear of you undermining his position again, you will find yourself without a position at all. Morvith's face darkened, but he bowed stiffly. As you command, Your Majesty. But his eyes, as they flickered to Marcus, promised that this wasn't over. That evening, after the princesses had been checked by medical staff and finally convinced to sleep, with Jasper curled up on Till's bed and 2 guards posted outside their doors, Marcus found himself summoned to Silvara's private chambers. He'd never been to this part of the palace before. The Empress's personal quarters were surprisingly modest, no throne room grandeur, just comfortable furniture and walls, decorated with children's drawings alongside historical tapestries. It was the room of a mother, not just a monarch. Silvara stood by the window, still in the same clothes from earlier, staring out at the city lights. She didn't turn when Marcus entered. I almost lost them today, she said quietly. I almost lost all 3 of my little stars because of political games and ancient hatred. But you didn't, Marcus said, moving to stand beside her. They're safe, because of you. Now she did turn, and Marcus was struck by how tired she looked. How vulnerable. You keep saving them, Marcus. Why? I told you. No, she interrupted. Tell me the real reason. Not the diplomatic answer, not the noble platitudes. The truth. Marcus looked away, wrestling with words that felt too big, too dangerous. When Catherine died, he said finally, I thought I'd lost the only family I'd ever have. The only people who would ever matter to me. He swallowed hard. But these past weeks, your daughters, they've made me feel something I thought I'd never feel again. They've made me feel like I matter. Like I'm not just a broken man going through the motions. You're not broken, Silvara said fiercely. You're healing. There's a difference. So are you. Marcus met her eyes. We're both healing, Silvara. And maybe we're helping each other do it. She reached up, her hand cupping his face with surprising gentleness. When I look at you, she whispered, I don't see a human or an alien. I don't see a diplomat or a security officer. I see a man who would die for my children. I see someone who understands grief and loss. I see? She hesitated, and Marcus saw fear flicker across her face. Not the fear of physical danger, but the fear of emotional vulnerability. I see someone I could love. Marcus's breath caught. Silvara, tell me I'm wrong, she said urgently. Tell me this is just shared trauma, just two lonely people finding comfort. Tell me to maintain professional distance, to remember our positions. I can't, Marcus admitted, because I've been feeling the same thing. And it terrifies me. Why? Because I already lost one person I loved, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I don't know if I can survive losing another. And don't lose me, Silvara said simply. Don't lose us. My daughters adore you. She took a shaky breath. I need you, Marcus Webb, not as an ambassador, not as a protector. As you. The space between them felt charged, electric. Marcus knew this was the moment. He could step back, maintain propriety, keep the walls around his heart intact. Or he could step forward, into the unknown, into the terrifying possibility of feeling alive again. He stepped forward. Their first kiss was gentle. Tentative, two wounded souls testing whether they could bear to touch without breaking. But Silvara's lips were soft against his. And when her arms wrapped around him, Marcus felt something inside him finally begin to mend. When they finally pulled apart, both were trembling. This complicates things, Marcus said, unable to keep a smile from his face. Everything worthwhile is complicated, Silvara replied, and her answering smile was radiant. Besides, my daughters will be insufferable when they find out. Neva has been trying to play matchmaker for weeks. She has? All three of them have. They've been about as subtle as a solar flare. Silvara laughed, and the sound was like music. Children see things adults often miss. Then maybe, Marcus said, pulling her close again, we should trust their wisdom. Maybe we should, Silvara agreed. And there, in the quiet of her chambers, while their fractured hearts began to heal, two people from different worlds found something neither had expected: hope for tomorrow, and the courage to reach for it. Outside, twin moons rose over Asteria Prime, and somewhere in the palace, three princesses slept soundly, their drawings of a new family scattered across their floors like promises waiting to be kept.